us know again what you're going to be talking about?
Yep. So the question was, can I share my screen now?
Yep.
So the question dealt with the the volume burst trades, and if we have a screener for the volume burst trades, and I am working on the screener right now. I'll show you guys kind of what it looks like, but just to recap what the volume burst trades are. If we look at it here, I'll just take I don't know, let's pick what's a active stock, Nvidia.
Yep.
So if we look at, something like Nvidia, and we'll go to the price action analysis, and we're going to go to yesterday's trades here. I'm going to look at the VWAP table. Oops, sorry, did I? Yep. So here we have some summary statistics of the trading activity in Nvidia in this case. And what we do is we start to look at the trades in more detail and granular view, and we try to spot things that are either unusual, or we tag things that are happening when there are different events happening throughout the day. Um, and one of the things that we categorize are these volume bursts. And the volume bursts are trades that are in very high volume, that occur in unusually high volume in a short period of time. Okay. Um, and we measure that by looking on typical intraday volume, and we use minute to minute. And when we look at it, what is it on a minute to minute basis? How much volume or dollar value does a stock trade? Typically, like between the early morning. How much does it trade? Because the volume profile does change. It looks kind of like a U shape where you have bigger volume in the morning, slows down in the afternoon, higher volume in during the end of the trading day. And then we look at an unusual burst of volume. And here there weren't that many yesterday in Nvidia. Okay, there were only two that we detected. One at 239, one at 254. Um, and if we just compare it to the 30-day, we could see usually we got about eight um, eight different bursts on the buy side, eight on the sell side, and typically you see like $2.2 billion worth on the buy side, 2.3 billion on the sell side. So 500 million. It's not a lot. There were two bursts, but it's not an unusual amount. We didn't see any sell bursts yesterday in Nvidia. Okay, here this shows us the volume weighted average price of the buy burst, and it gives us a reference to see where did these buy burst, the price, where was it established versus where the stock went post post burst. How did it drift afterwards? Okay, so in this situation there are two of them for a VWAP price $1,162.62. Okay, and we see that at the end of the day the stock was 1,164, indicating that the stock drifted higher post burst. Okay, so what we're doing is saying, well, what happened? What happened afterwards? Did the what is the idea behind that? Why are we watching the post burst? Why do we want to know how did the stock move following it? And what we're looking for is did did the liquidity, right? Did the taker of the liquidity clean up some resistance there where the next levels are moving up? Because if there's a lot of resistance, let's say there's a lot of um, if there was a lot of asks and offers on the order book, that even a big buy burst, could fail because there's way more, way more uh, uh, supply on the order book, and once the buy burst ends, if he goes away, we'll see a drift lower, right? So where does the stock go afterwards? Also is important. How's it trading post burst? And here we also see what is the impact, the price impact on the burst. Okay, so when we see a burst, how much did the stock move from the previous minute? So we saw the burst, but how much did the buy activity have to reach? Right? Did they move the prices higher by a lot or by a little? And that gives us the sense of how much liquidity there was because if it was a little, there was a lot of liquidity there on the sell side. They didn't have to step up a lot. If that tick from the previous minute to the next was high, that means that the buyer had to step up more, pay up more from the previous VWAP price. So here we see on average it was 94 cents, which, if we compare to the average, we have our benchmarks here, kind of was in range. So nothing in Nvidia that was like greatly unusual. These were all within range, daily range. The only thing maybe that's noticeable, there were very few buy bursts, but there were no sell bursts at all yesterday. And when we look at this, what could we be trying to find is where there's an unusual amount of pressure somewhere, before the stock moves. Now, if the stock moved 20% and you see a lot of pressure, okay, it's already reacting to the news, right? So it's kind of like the event already happened. But that doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes how does a stock, before a stock can move to the next level, right? It has to burn through. It has to take off that supply, right, of stock. So a building up of pressure, and that's where the user is asking, well, is there kind of a screener where I could compare the buy versus sell? And the answer is I'm working on it. You guys don't have it yet available, but I'll show you some of what it looks like because while it's internal, I'm testing, I'm trying to add more features to it, as we're getting feedback from users. Okay, so we are getting feedback. There are we have quite a bit of users actually asking about this feature. I get a lot of emails. So as I'm looking through the feature requests and trying to see the commonalities. So I'm just going to go here and just kind of show you what we're working on. So this is the version that I'm still developing on. And I was just going to show this since we are getting lots of requests and questions about it. And this looks at the buy burst and the sell burst right now, and I'm going to be creating a little bit more columns here to show the ratios. But let's look for maybe something where we think might be an unusual buildup in the pressure, right? So let's first start with the buy bursts, right? An unusual amount, and we'll say, well, how many buy bursts do we want to see at least? Because one might not be enough. Do we want to see some repeats, right? Like a repeat of throughout the day where there are takers of liquidity. Okay. When we look at the markets are kind of, if you look at the exchanges, and they're defined as makers and takers, right? Takers of liquidity. They're makers of liquidity providers, people putting things, market makers, people putting it on the order books, and then there are takers that take it. So let's say we want to see at least 5 or more. So this is what right now I'm looking at, like today's buyers, right? And we could see what is the ratio. Like maybe we want to see that today's, like over here, are higher than the average. All right, so we could look at the ratio, and let's just say maybe 3 times the normal amount. Okay, let's say we want to see what is the notional value of all these trades. Maybe you have a lot of buy bursts, but they don't add up to a lot. Maybe it could add up to $10,000 worth of stock for very liquid stocks. But if we want to see maybe something more significant, we can put in 1 million shares, and we'll just see what comes out. Just as a practice here. And then let's compare the notional value, right? Whatever the notional value is today, to an average daily, and we need this ratio here. So let's just say we want above 3. So now I'm filtering these out here. So you could see there's still a lot in here, 117. So let's just keep going. And I'm going to limit it to common stock. All right, because in ETFs, an ETF has a lot of stocks in it. It's an index, so that's not necessarily the ETF will not move unless all the other components, they still have to, the NAV has to move. So let's keep it to the common stock here. And what else we want to see is that there's burst, maybe an imbalance to one side. Because if you have buy and sell bursts, well, you got lots of going on. That could be an indicator of coming up volatility, or there's lots of volatility, right? Or something happened and now you got both sides. But what if we don't see it on both sides? What if we see very little on the sell side? So let's just do that. I'm going to say on the sell side, maybe the count, it's below typical average daily. So now I'm looking at this count and saying this ratio, the number of bursts is low on the sell side, but it's high on the buy side. And let's say the notional value is low too. So let's do that. I'm going to do the low below 1. So you can see here all this, there aren't that many now. Once we put it up there, we see that there's only 3. And this happened yesterday, right? So this happened yesterday, and we have the option volume here. So maybe we want to see, at least 1,000, I don't know, volume in the options, because this is a volume. So let's just say we need 1,000 contracts trading out. So all of a sudden now I narrowed it down to 2. And, we could see here that one of them was Honeywell. So here's Honeywell. And it had $81.5 million worth of buy bursts versus, 13.8 million in sell bursts. And that's 3 times its daily average on the buy side, only half on the sell side. What is this? Applied Digital had $4.3 million worth of buy bursts versus daily average 1.3. And you can see here on the sell side, it was much lighter, 386 versus 1.1. So this is kind of the beginning of, is there a pressure now being built up on one side? Because to move that book, right, to move that order book to much higher level, you need to clean up those offers. And then we could go look at how those are trading. So let's say, Honeywell is a much, bigger market cap stock. mean, we could go to one of the. Oh, let's do one on the sell side. You guys want to do it on the sell side?
Sure.
Okay. So let's do one on the sell side. So this would be the opposite, where we're seeing, all of a sudden a big pressure on the, on the sell side, hitting the markets without buy bursts, more sell bursts, more buy. So basically, I'm just going to be reversing this out. So what the notional? Let's do it on above 3. This is below 1. We'll keep this any, let's say notional above 1,000,000. This we want here. Let's just do for now any, let's go above 5. So let me see here. So we have 3 so far that hit our sell burst. Did I miss something here? Let's do this above 3. All right, let's just keep this one out for now. So here we have 3 that hit it. Schlumberger, US Bank Corp, and then Energy Fuels. So let's just see what happened here. Schlumberger on the buy side, we see $24 million worth of buy bursts, close to its average. But on the sell side, we had $80 million of sell bursts, which is 3.5 times its usual. USB on the buy side, 2 million versus average 14.6. On the sell side, 61 million versus average 13 million. That's 4 times usual. And then Energy Fuels, here we had 1.6 million versus usually 2.4 million. On the sell side, though, 5.5 million versus usual 1.7 million. So that's 3 times usual. And so that's kind of like the beginning of like, okay, so what's going on here? How did this stock float afterwards? So we see that VWAP price was 43.21 on the sell side, but the stock floated up a little bit, 0.5%. So here it's interesting, there's still some bid pressure there. Watch it and see if that continues. But obviously, if that continues, if you keep doing that, eventually you could hit out that order book. So that's Schlumberger. Let's see USB. I'm just seeing if there's anything like news or anything out there. And this is UU. So another thing we'd want to look at is if there's an explanation for it. If there is news there, it could just be reacting to news, which would not make it that unusual. Once there's a news event out there and we see these bursts, then it could be explained away. Like, okay, people are just repricing or rebalancing their positions. So another thing you'd want to look at is if there's news or an upcoming event which could explain some of this unusual activity.
Hey, D.
Yeah.
Sorry about the delay, but Rob was asking a question, and he's very thankful that you've created this new tool. Thumbs up or recommended by everyone. He's asking, does this tool have a filter that allows you to use the threshold list to filter those that may be under pressure?
Well, not this screener, no. So this one wouldn't have a thread, but it's a good point. I like your thinking here. If there's so what would we do?
Yeah, Rob actually says it seems reasonable that if a stock is on the threshold list as a sell burst, it could result in more likelihood of potentially a bigger move, Rob says. So that's his thought.
And I like your thought process, and thank you, Rob, for the question, because what would we look for next? What other catalyst, right, could make this move more violent, right? This is just a clue. It's a footprint. It's not, we can't just rely on one thing, but what else would be a catalyst for a potential explosive move? right? Because now we're seeing what we're doing is just studying that market and saying, okay, something is going on with the stock, right? We're looking at the supply and demand there, but what else could occur that could make this move even more explosive? Is it something like, a potential where the if it's on a threshold list, well, what will happen is that's hard to borrow. So you don't have the liquidity from short sellers, right, as you would have. And if it's on a threshold list, there are potentially, short positions already there that maybe I need to start covering. We could look at the options market. We could look up upcoming events, um, and so forth. Where, what else, if we're seeing this curve, what else would cause this stock, to have a more explosive move and maybe even potentially in the upside. So I love that thinking, and it is, you know, in line with what a trader would think, right? Okay, so I'm seeing this. What else do I see? How do I put those pieces together that will push those odds, right? That are increasing the odds of a more explosive move. All right, Will, but we're right up at 9:30, so I'm going to just end it there.
Awesome job, Dima. We did have some questions that I'll zip over for you. We can answer on tomorrow's show. Thanks
Okay.
everyone for joining. Nice comments about the new tool. Great job, D.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Stay safe out there. Have a great trading day and hope to see you guys